In this example, we're going to have to find the missing value. So instead of finding the mean, they're going to give you the mean, but you're missing a point of data. So if you know that there's 3 pieces of data, 28, 36, and something else, and you know the mean is 35, how can you figure out what that number is? We know from the last example in finding the mean that in order to find 35, I would have to follow those 2 steps. I would have to add my data together. I'd have to do 28 plus 36 plus whatever that number is. I would have to add those first. I'm going to put parentheses around them because that's my first step. After that step, I would have then divided by how many data I had. 1, including the one that you don't know, 2, 3. So you would have to then divide by 3, and we know that that should give us the mean, which is 35. So you've just written an equation, and we have worked on solving equations before. All right, so this side of my equation has to equal this side. This is where you split down the middle. Right? You want to figure out what this question mark is. So there's a few things you could do. You could first add these together. So I would add what's in parentheses together, and I would get 64. So 64 plus some number, I don't know, divided by 3 equals 35. Now to start getting the question mark by itself, we have to do the opposite operations. So instead of dividing by 3, I'm going to multiply by 3 on each side. Okay, that's going to cancel out my 3, which is great because then I'm just left with 64 plus I don't know what yet. Right? And I don't need parentheses anymore because that's the only operation I'm doing. Equals 35 times 3, which gives me 105. Okay, I'm still looking to get the question mark by itself. So over here, instead of adding 64, I'm going to be subtracting 64 on both sides. It's going to be a 2-step. All right, that would cancel out. Plus 64 and a minus 64 cancels out. So I'm just left with what number I want. And that number, that value is 105 divided by 64. Oops, sorry, minus 64. 41. So my missing value is 41. I'm going to go through those one more time with the example over here. The next example says 80, 66, an unknown value, 72, 77, and it gives you the mean as 72.8. So I know that if I were to take all of the data, 80 plus 66 plus a question mark plus 72 plus 77, if I were to add all those together and then divide it by the number of data, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because including the unknown, that would give me 72.8. Okay, so now I'm going to go through and I'm going to solve the equation and figure out what that question mark is. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to add all of these other data points together. In my calculator, I got 295. So I would have 295 plus whatever that 5th value is, that question mark, right? And then I would be dividing it by 5 and getting 72.8. So now I'm going to do those opposite operations so I can get the question mark by itself. So instead of dividing by 5, I'm going to multiply by 5 on both sides. Okay, that cancels out that one. Then I'm left with 295 plus I don't know what equals, on my calculator I did 72.8 times 5 and I got 364. There it goes. Okay, my last step, instead of adding 295, I'm subtracting 295 from both sides. And then I'm left with canceling that out. 69, my calculator says. Now, a good way to double check is just to see, is 69 kind of in the middle of these? It's right in there, so that kind of makes sense. So it'd be 69.